Today we're going to find out just how far you can get in BTD5 using only one of each tower in the game. Of course, this means I won't be allowed to use any special agents either, with the exception of one portable lake, since the map we're playing on, Express Shipping, doesn't have any water available to place our monkey sub or the buccaneer. Now on round 1, I'm going to immediately start with the 0-0 banana farm, which is only possible because of the 400 extra starting cash that I get from my Monkey Knowledge Laboratory being maxed out. Additionally, I can also do a little trick here, where I wait for the farm to produce 2 bunches of bananas during the round, and then immediately sell and rebuy it, wait for it to produce another 2, and do the same thing over and over until the balloons have exited the map. With Express Shipping being the longest map in the game, there was enough time to end round 1 with 806 cash, which includes the farm still producing bananas even once the round is ended. It's also important to note, this trick is only viable because of the fact that I get 99% of a tower's original price back every time I sell it, which is another perk of having a max monkey lab. Now on round 2, I'm just doing the same thing as I was on the first round, which allows me to end it with 1,413 cash, and by the end of round 3, I'm up to 2,092 cash. So I decided at this point to get a 1-0 engineer, and with its specialist building enabled, the engineer can now produce super sentries, which are known for being quite powerful against the early game, and that includes the addition of lead popping capability as well. And since I actually am popping the balloons now, the rounds will be much shorter, so I upgraded my farm to a 2-0 because there won't be enough time during the round to do the 0-0 farm trick. And of course, if I wanted to be extra efficient, I could have waited longer to get the engineer, but once you see the next phase of my plan, you'll realize that money is going to quickly become the least of our concerns. But the reason I'm using a 1-0 engineer is because it's a really cheap way to buy myself the time I need to save up for a 0-4 sniper. I upgraded the farm to a 3-0 so it would produce bananas more quickly, even though this upgrade is less efficient for its price than a 2-0 is, but that doesn't really matter when you're only limited to one farm at a time. Additionally, my plan wasn't actually to keep the farm anyways, but rather to sell it so that I could afford the supply crate sniper and begin using that to generate a bunch of extra cash. If you didn't know, this process is called sniper farming and involves buying a 0-4 sniper, using the ability to generate a crate of extra cash, and then immediately selling and rebuying the sniper to instantly get the ability back. Of course, the quicker you are at this, the better off you're going to be, and I'm far from being the best at micro myself, but it was enough to quickly start saving up a bit of extra cash, so then I switched over to using the helicopter supply crate upgrade, since this gives you a lot more cash and thus is a faster way to farm. And I spent the next several minutes getting as much extra cash as I could, but honestly, in retrospect, a lot of this was wasted time because all I was really planning to do is use the Regrow rainbow balloons on round 42 to create a Regrow farm with the tornado wizard, and then have a ray of doom at the end to destroy all the balloons before they can escape. So farming nearly 300k definitely wasn't necessary. However, I did nearly mess up on round 42 the first time, as I ended up not selling my towers quickly enough, which actually destroyed all the Regrow balloons, so I had to quit out of the game. Upon loading back in, things started off just fine until I quickly realized that I should actually switch over to the Dartling Gunner specialist building, as this will allow me to lock the tower in place, which will make the next part of my plan possible. You see, I could make this farm at least 5 times faster by simply upgrading the wizard to a 4th tier. However, if you've seen my video about how many balloons can you pop in 24 hours, you might remember that eventually, the game crashes when you run a regrow farm for too long. At the time, I suspected it was when you reach 100 million pops, because the game never expected the number to get that high. And based on these recent comments, I think that theory is correct. So, by using a 3rd tier wizard, I can have the farm only pop around 15 million balloons per hour, which then gives me several hours to farm extra lives from the support Chinook helicopter. If you aren't aware, the way this particular upgrade works is that it always gives you a supply crate full of cash on its first use, which is why it's possible to helicopter farm, and then a crate with extra lives on the second use, and it goes back and forth between these two infinitely. So yeah, basically, what I have to do is just keep on pressing the number 2 on my keyboard to activate the ability once the cooldown ends, and try to generate as many extra lives as I can before the farm reaches 100 million total pops. Now of course, this is easier said than done, and the monotony already started sinking in on me by the time I had reached about the 10% mark. I did get up to over 11,000 lives already, but in my state of boredom, I made a pretty big oopsie. After pausing the game, I was going to stop the recording for a minute, and ended up mindlessly exiting out of BTD5, which means my progress was now reset to the start of round 42. Now, I know it was only 10%, but that loss made me realize just how long it was going to take to actually reach 100 million pops. So I did something that I've never done before, which is using a speed hack to actually make the game faster for this part. At first I tried 10 times, but this was actually a bit too fast, I think because the game was now processing a regrow farm 10 times more quickly as well, which meant I could no longer activate abilities. So then I brought it down to 5x, which did work, and I ended up tweaking it until I got to the magic number of 6.6 times speed. Now, I understand if you aren't a big fan of using the speed up function, but I'm going to show the OBS window at the end, so you can see that even with this help, it still took multiple hours to reach the 100 million pop mark. You might also notice our life pacing is a bit worse now, as before I was able to farm a bit over 1 life per 1000 pops, whereas now I'm a bit under this mark. I'm going to guess that the main reason for this is because every time I miss the timing, my mistake is amplified by 3.3 times. I'd say 3.3 because the game's own fast forward function no longer works when you're using a speed hack, so if fast forward was enabled, the game would only be 3.3 times slower than it is currently. In any case, if someone wants to send me a decent auto-hotkey script, I'd be more than happy to run the game at normal speed for as many hours as it takes for a challenge like this. But unfortunately, I had already injured my left wrist a few days before, so it just would have been extremely difficult to farm extra lives for nearly 10 hours straight. Still though, by the end of it, I had spent just about 3.5 hours activating the helicopter supply crate ability, while the Regrow farm got up to about 99 million pops, and this is why I said money was going to be the least of our concerns, because in addition to farming just under 86,000 lives, I also managed to generate 54 million cash thanks to all the balloons I popped. And while running this farm, I even went from rank 83 all the way up to 86. So now the question is, which 4th tier do I pick for every tower? Well, starting with the Dart Monkey, I think having one Juggernaut to help catch ceramics at the end is going to be a bit more valuable than having a single triple dart that can sometimes be converted into a Super Monkey. So I'm putting a Juggernaut here on this straight path at the end of the map. Now, when it comes to the tack shooter, I think the Blade Maelstrom ability is overall going to be better than the Ring of Fire would be, and I'm placing that towards the upper left, where ideally, the ability can do the most damage. I'm also going to have to decide which village is worth getting pretty soon, but as for the sniper, I'm going to go with the Cripple Moab over the semi-auto. Since we only get to have one sniper, I think being able to stun a ZOMG will definitely be the most valuable thing we can get out of it. When it comes to the Boomerang, I'm going with the Turbocharge ability, simply because I don't think the Glaive Lord is going to be capable of dealing much damage to the Moab class balloons. Now with the Ninja Monkey, we have our first choice that is super obvious, because even though the Bloon Jitsu can deal a much higher damage per second itself, compared to the Bloon Sabotage ability, that ability can slow down all newly spawned balloons by 50% for 15 seconds, which is incredibly valuable to effectively give every tower double the time to deal damage while the ability is active. I put the ninja near the end of the track because I'm hoping the flash bomb can catch some of the balloons before they escape as well. With the bomb tower, I'm going with the Moab Assassin ability because that is simply going to be a lot more effective against Moab class balloons, and just like with the ninja, I'm getting the Absolute Zero Ice Tower because it comes with an activated ability that can briefly slow down all balloons on screen, which also includes ZOMGs. With the glue, it doesn't really matter too much because this tower can affect Moab class balloons in this game regardless, but I went with the 2-4 Glue Striker since that has an activated ability that can glue all non-Moab class balloons on screen, which could help us catch some ceramics. The reason I have it at the bottom is because I don't want to slow down ceramics too early and have them get in the way when towers like the Bomb Shooter are trying to deal damage to Moab class balloons. So the next tower I want to get is a Buccaneer, which of course means I have to put down a portable lake, and for this tower, I'm going to get the 4-2 aircraft carrier as it deals a much higher damage per second, but if I end up losing to Moabs or BFBs, I'll definitely try microing the 2-4 grappling hook ability, which can sink any single balloon up to a BFB. However, there's a different ability that I'm mainly planning to focus my micro on, which I'll get to in just a minute. But as for the Super Monkey, I have another tough decision to make because ultimately, if I went with the Temple, I would have to sacrifice several of my towers, and none of them would be very close to the $30,000 mark that you need in order to gain the maximum possible strength for your temple. So I actually think it might be better to use a Technological Terror up here in the upper left corner, where its ability can potentially be microed to keep dealing 1000 damage to all the balloons as they have to travel around it. For the Wizard, I'm going with the Phoenix because, well, my name is Phenomics, but no, seriously, I'm expecting that to be a lot more effective overall, and I still gotta replace the Boomerang I sold to put down my Super Monkey, but also, I completely skipped over the Monkey Ace. Now for this tower, I'm going with the Ground Zero, since it comes with an activated ability that can deal 350 damage to every single balloon on screen at once, which is probably the main ability that I'm going to actually try microing during this run. Now for the village, I gave it some thought and decided the call to arms would be better over the energy beacon because reduced ability cooldowns are nice, but in this game, you can instantly get an ability back by selling and rebuying a tower anyways, so I think that having all these towers up here, under the effect of the call to arms ability, will be more valuable. Now with the farm, I mean, this tower literally can't do anything to the balloons, but I'll get a factory down here in the corner just for the fun of it. With the mortar, I'm going with the big one for now, and positioning it in the upper left corner, where balloons spend the most time. But the other 4th tier does come with an ability that stuns all balloons on screen for a second, so I will try that out if the ace ability doesn't prove to be effective enough. Now for the Darling Gunner, I think the best spot is actually right here where I put the banana farm, so let me get that out of the way, and I'm going with the Ray of Doom over the bed, mainly because I think all the extra pierce is going to help a lot when you only get a single Darling Gunner. With the Spike Factory, I'm going with the Spike Mines at the end of the track, although I am kind of curious if microing the Spike Storm ability could potentially be worthwhile later on. And then the helicopter gives us a really obvious choice, as the Apache Dart ship is far more powerful than the support Chinook, offensively speaking. For the engineer, I'm going with the 2-4 in order to get the overclock ability, which I'll probably use on the Super Monkey, assuming it's our biggest damage dealer. Then I'm going to get the 4-2 Bloon Chipper targeted to strong, and my thinking here is the same with the sniper, in that being able to stall an extra ZOMG is always really helpful. And finally, you have the sub, where I'm going with the first strike ability, as this provides a powerful activated ability that can deal 6,000 damage, which is spread across every balloon it hits. So, with every tower placed, and somewhat of a game plan moving forward, it's time to see just how far we can actually go. And I'm gonna let the game run at first without my input until we're about to start losing lives, in which case I will then begin using activated abilities. Oh wait, I should probably switch my specialist building, and I was gonna go with the Super Monkey one, but then I wasn't sure because all it really does is increase the tower's range if you don't have a temple, so maybe I should use the Bloon Chipper one to stun the balloons it releases, or maybe the Sniper one to get faster firing. I honestly don't know. Well, I guess for now I'll just stick with the Super Monkey's building because honestly I don't know what else to do. As you can probably imagine, the balloons we have to face at first were quite underpowered compared to the amount of defense we have built up, and thus it took quite a while for the balloons to even begin making their own screen. But alas, once we get past the round 85 mark, we enter true free play mode, and now every single round is going to consist of a random combination of ceramics, Moabs, BFBs, and ZOMGs, all of which will be getting faster every single round as well, along with the Moab class balloons also gaining extra health. So this is where things actually start to get real. And while the early free play rounds tend to be pretty easy, as they have a lower RBE and thus contain a lot less ZOMGs, once we got past the round 110 mark, the towers really began to struggle. The Spike Factory began having to catch some of the balloons before they could escape, and sure enough, I had to quit out of the game on round 117, as we had just lost a decent chunk of lives. Now that I've loaded back in, which gives me the lives back, it is time for me to start using all of our special abilities now, and see just how much further that can get us. So, I have to admit, it's pretty hard to manage like 13 or 14 different special abilities at once, and of course, some of them are a lot more valuable than others. So my main strategy was to use the Ninja Sabotage and Absolute Zero abilities to get the ZOMGs moving extremely slowly, and then I'd use the Tech Terror ability on them along with the Ground Zero. Then I would also go and use all the other abilities, which became extremely tough with the fact that hotkeys only work from 1 to 9, so there were a few abilities that I actually had to go and click on to use. Alas, this ended up not being quite as effective as you might expect, mainly because the free play speed and health ramping really starts to kick in pretty fast past the round 110 and 120 mark, and I ended up having to quit out of the game on round 129 when a ton of balloons were leaking. So then, there is only really one thing left to do, which is begin microing the Ace's Ground Zero ability, and at this point, I'm not going to worry about using any of the other special abilities besides the Ice and Ninja slowdowns, so I think it would make sense to switch a few of the other towers around. For instance, I could get a Glaive Lord down here in this curve, where I could hopefully catch the ceramics pretty well, because even though it's not good against Moab class balloons, it is really good against regular balloons, and I also really have to know whether or not it's worth it to just get the temple now, and then have it underneath the Call to Arms village, which I could activate in addition to the Vengeful Temple ability that we get from the Super Monkey Specialist building. What I'm going to do is try out this setup without microing the Ace ability, and see if it's better or worse than the previous setup was. Alright, at first I wasn't too sure, but it's pretty needless to say, this is way better than what I was doing before. Once you concentrate a call to arms and the engineer's overclock on the temple, along with it being able to further double its attack speed and give itself 2 beams with the vengeful ability, it simply has way more power than everything else combined. Especially with the double slowdown from the ninja and ice, which lets me getting a lot further than I expected without even needing any micro from the ace. In fact, I got all the way up to round 166 before finally losing some lives again, so now I'm going to have to slow down the game in order to begin microing the ace's ground 0 ability, and of course, I'm going to also make sure I'm still activating the other abilities given how powerful they have proven to be. Well, the Moab Assassin and First Strike I'm less worried about, but everything else will be important for sure. And so, I micro the ace as well as I could, while also managing all the other abilities, and for a while, this was going pretty well. And sometimes, I could even get in the zone and really time all the abilities well, but pretty soon, my wrist began getting pretty sore, as I was around 50 minutes in at this point, and I've only gone from around 166 up to 180 in that time. So, I figured I could skip a few rounds to at least save myself from totally getting carpal tunnel. I only skipped up to round 190, which still went down pretty well, so then I went up to round 196, and at this point, the Bloons are definitely a bit faster and stronger than they were before, but I'm still able to take them down. However, my wrist really is getting a bit tired, and I've been using my touchpad this entire time, which certainly doesn't help, so let me rest my hands for a couple minutes, and then I'll come back to it. Honestly, I was hoping the rest would be more effective than it was, but at this point, my arm is just really tired, and I ended up leaking some lives for the first time on round 199. I'm doing my best to maintain the ability micro, but pretty soon, I lost a ton of lives on round 203 because I just couldn't keep up anymore, so I'm gonna have to quit out of the game here and actually rest for a little while. After a few hours, I came back to it, but I think it's fair to say, I was already close to losing even when I left, and sure enough, with my micro simply not being the best, I already struggled to keep up with the Bloons past the round 200 mark and ended up losing to round 208, although clearly I was messing up a lot. So I'm going to give it one more try, and even just getting 5 more rounds has already taken over 30 minutes, and unfortunately, on my second try, I still wasn't able to get past round 208. Now, I would love to see what the BTD5 community is capable of, if someone has better micro or knows a better strategy than what I used here today, but I'm still pretty happy with this mark overall, and I actually want to give a shout out to somebody who just joined the highest level of channel membership that I have, ZOMG Zapper. I seriously appreciate that a ton, and giving you a shout out is actually the least I can do. And I also want to thank Smooth and Shirkenlord, who have both been channel members for several months now. Smooth in particular you might recognize from the recent live stream, where he was gifting memberships as well. So with that said, huge appreciation to every one of them, and also to everybody who donated during that live stream. That was absolutely insane, and it was something I never expected, so if you did donate, please do leave a comment on this video. I know there were a lot of people, and I didn't catch everybody, but some of them were like Candy Skill. Him and Micah Moo were the 2 top donators, and they both hit insane numbers. Like, I seriously cannot believe their generosity, if I'm being honest. We had Butterman, we had Dippy Guy, we had, I think, somebody... trying to remember, we had somebody named Emerald was the first person to donate, and we had a lot more people as well. We had Sylvia. I'm just trying to think of everybody off the top of my head. We had Spooky donated, and there were more people as well, so if I didn't catch everybody, I know I didn't. I'm really sorry about that. I was honestly getting really tired towards the end of the stream, so I just did not catch everything, and also it was, 22 hours, so yeah, that's on me though, and next time I'm going to keep better track of that. So I really do appreciate everybody who made that such an amazing live stream. And with that being said, huge shout out to all of you who are watching this video as well and made 2024 such a great first year for the channel. It genuinely means a lot to have one of the best communities on all of YouTube. And if you enjoyed this video, you might also want to know how far a max tempo can get on every map in BTD5.